It was just another regular morning in Edgewood, a quiet suburban town. The sun was shining brightly as it reflected off the large glass windows of Millbrook Motors, the town's high-end car dealership. This place was known for selling some of the most expensive cars in the world, from rare Ferraris to limited edition Lamborghinis. The showroom was a place where the affluent came to indulge in their love of fine automobiles. Inside the showroom, the air was crisp and professional. The staff was well dressed, each person wearing the same polished look that matched the opulence of the cars surrounding them. Everything in the showroom, from the gleaming marble floors to the shiny chrome detailing on the cars, screamed luxury. Customers, dressed in sharp suits and designer dresses, strolled around admiring the selection of cars, each of them oozing wealth and exclusivity. But then, the quiet hum of the showroom was broken by the sound of two bicycles gliding smoothly up the entrance to Millbrook Motors. The boys who rode them were dressed in combat shorts and plain white t-shirts, their sneakers worn from use. Nothing about them suggesting they belonged in such an extravagant place. They were just two ordinary teenage boys. Filled with youthful curiosity and wide-eyed wonder, they parked their bikes by the front steps, their eyes darting toward the showroom's glass doors. For a brief moment, they stood there, taking it all in. There was no sign of arrogance in their demeanor, just pure awe. They didn't touch anything. They didn't shout or act out in excitement. They simply stood there, mesmerized by the gleaming machines in front of them. Alex, the older of the two, turned to his younger brother, Ben, and whispered, "That's it. That's the one." Ben's eyes lit up as he followed Alex's gaze. The car Alex pointed at was a deep midnight blue hypercar, a work of art in both engineering and design. With its sleek curves, oversized wheels, and a price tag over $900,000, it was nothing short of a dream car. They walked closer to admire it, their faces glowing with excitement. But as they approached, a voice from behind them cut through the air, sharp and condescending. "Can I help you?" The boys turned, and a salesman in a navy blue suit approached them, adjusting his cufflinks as he walked. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, and his hair was meticulously styled. He looked every bit the part of someone who worked in a high-end car dealership. Alex and Ben felt his eyes scanning them up and down, pausing at their worn clothes and scuffed sneakers. The salesman's lips curled into a smirk. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice dripping with disdain, "but I think you're in the wrong place." Alex hesitated, but replied, his voice faltering slightly, "We were just wondering if this car really costs $900,000. The salesman didn't wait for the question to finish. He cut them off with a tone that was both dismissive and patronizing. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere," he said, enunciating each word as though speaking to someone who didn't understand English. Behind him, some of the other staff chuckled quietly, their laughter not at all subtle. A couple of nearby customers looked over, exchanging amused glances. Ben's smile faded, and he glanced down at the floor, feeling a wave of humiliation wash over him. Alex nodded awkwardly, trying to salvage some dignity. "Sorry to bother you," Alex muttered, turning away. The boys slowly walked out of the showroom, their heads held just a little lower than when they had walked in. The glass door shut quietly behind them. As they stepped back outside, the two boys mounted their bicycles in silence. Their heads were filled with the sharp sting of rejection, and they pedaled away slowly, unsure of what to say to each other. The next morning arrived crisp and clear, with the sun rising over Edgewood, casting a golden glow over the town. It was just another day for most people. But for Alex and Ben, things were about to change in ways they never expected. The boys woke up early, but there was no excitement in their movements. They had slept fitfully the night before, their minds replaying the moments in the showroom when they had been dismissed. It wasn't just the rude comments from the salesman or the laughter that followed them as they left. It was the feeling of being invisible, like they didn't matter in a world that was built around appearances and wealth. "Do you think Dad will be mad?" Ben asked as they got dressed, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Alex replied, running a hand through his messy hair. "But he's always told us to be ourselves, no matter what anyone thinks. He'll understand." They dressed casually, just like the day before. Their combat shorts and white t-shirts, the only outfits they felt comfortable in. It wasn't the clothing that defined them, but rather who they were underneath. two young men raised with values of humility, hard work, and respect. They walked downstairs to find their father in the study. As usual, his face unreadable, his demeanor calm as he looked over some papers. He had been a man of few words, but when he did speak, people listened. His wealth wasn't something he flaunted, but it was apparent in the sleek design of their home. The marble floors, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the custom artwork adorning the walls. The family home was a place of quiet luxury, but it wasn't the objects that mattered most. It was the lessons he taught his sons. "Back already?" their father asked, his voice steady as he glanced up from his papers. Alex and Ben nodded, standing still for a moment, unsure of how to approach the situation. Their father studied them for a long while, as if trying to gauge what had happened. Finally, he spoke again. "Everything okay?" The words came out slowly, like they were stuck in their throats. Alex opened his mouth to say yes, the automatic response, but stopped himself. He could feel the frustration bubbling up inside him. They had been humiliated, treated like they didn't matter, and it was hard to let that feeling go. "No," Alex said quietly, his voice carrying more weight than he intended. "Not really." Their father motioned toward the leather armchairs by the fireplace. "Sit." "Hey." The boys dropped their bags on the floor and sank into the chairs. For a few moments, there was nothing but the sound of the clock ticking on the wall, the soft crackle of the fire. Their father remained still, swirling the amber liquid in his tumbler but not drinking it. He wasn't one for rushed decisions. He took his time, thinking carefully before speaking. His silence wasn't an absence of feeling. It was simply his way of processing. After what felt like an eternity, he turned to face them. "Tell me what happened," he said, his tone calm but firm. He was listening, completely present. Alex started first, the words tumbling out in fragments, like they didn't know how to piece the story together. "We went to the dealership," he began, his voice faltering slightly. "We just wanted to look at the car we'd seen online. We weren't messing around. We were polite. We were just curious. But one of the salesmen, he looked at us like we were nothing, told us we were in the wrong place, that we didn't belong." Ben's voice broke as he took over. "He laughed at us, said the car started at $900,000, like we were idiots or something." The words hit the air with a heaviness that seemed to hang in the room. Their father didn't speak right away, his eyes narrowing slightly as he listened. He knew the world could be cruel, especially to those who weren't rich or flashy, but it hurt to hear how his sons had been treated. It wasn't just about the salesman's cruelty. It was about the assumption that they didn't belong, just because of what they wore. There was a woman, though, Alex added quickly, trying to offer some light in the story. She came over after the others had turned us away. She was really nice. She showed us the specs on the car, treated us like we mattered. Their father nodded slowly, processing the story, but his face remained calm. He wasn't angry, at least not yet. He was just gathering the information, his mind already beginning to work through what he would do next. He turned to Ben. "Why do you think people treat you differently based on what you're wearing?" Ben looked down at his hands, his mind processing the question. "I guess because they think clothes mean something, that if you don't look a certain way, you don't belong in places like that." Their father smiled faintly, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the reality they lived in. "Because people often confuse appearance with value," he said, his voice low and steady, "and that tells you more about them than it does about you." Ben nodded slowly, the words sinking in. He had heard those kinds of things before from his father, but it felt different now. It felt more real, more tangible. They hadn't done anything wrong. They had just been themselves, and yet they had been judged. The room fell silent again. Their father stood, walked over to the window, and looked out over the view, the sprawling garden, the city beyond. Everything in their life was carefully curated, meticulously designed, but it was still just stuff. The real power, the real value, was in how they treated people, not how much money they had. For a long while, their father said nothing. He simply stared out at the horizon, hands clasped behind his back. His sons sat in the chairs, each lost in their thoughts, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Finally, their father spoke, his voice calm and clear. "Thank you for telling me." It wasn't a statement filled with fury or immediate action. It was just 5 words, spoken with such composure that it made the moment feel even heavier. The boys didn't know what to say next, but they didn't need to. They had told their story, and their father had listened. Not with outrage, but with attention. Dinner that night was unusually quiet. The long mahogany table seemed too wide for just 3 people. The plates were set precisely, the chandelier above casting a soft glow over the silverware. The boys picked at their food, glancing occasionally at their father. He ate slowly, methodically, present in each moment. Every action, every movement was deliberate. At one point, the older brother cleared his throat. "You're not mad?" he asked softly. Their father didn't look up from his plate. "At whom?" "At the salesman," the older brother asked, his voice uncertain. The people who laughed. Their father placed his fork down gently, looked up at them, and replied with a quiet calmness that only he could manage. "I don't waste anger on people who show me who they are," he said. "I pay attention, and then I act when it matters." The next morning, the mansion was calm, bathed in soft sunlight, as the family carried on with their usual routine. But for Alex and Ben, things felt different. The heaviness of the day before lingered in the back of their minds, but their father's words had given them a quiet strength. It wasn't just about the car dealership, it was about understanding their own worth, regardless of the superficial judgments of others. Downstairs, the father moved with his usual grace, the polished floors echoing under his footsteps as he walked into his study. His hands rested on the desk as he made a quiet phone call. The world outside continued as normal, but the wheels of change were already in motion. He was about to act, but it wouldn't be in the way anyone expected. "Yes," he said, his voice calm but decisive. "I need both cars delivered here by 8:00 a.m. tomorrow. No delays." He paused, listening to the response. "No, not the usual delivery. Have the drivers wait outside the dealership. I want the timing to be precise." Another pause. "It's time. They need to remember that not everyone who looks ordinary is who they appear to be." He ended the call, sat back in his chair, and stared out of the window. The sky was vast and open, just like his plans. It was about showing the world that appearances didn't matter, that respect and power came from within, not from how you were dressed or what you owned. His sons had been judged unfairly. It was time to restore their dignity and remind everyone else that true worth couldn't be measured by clothes or status. The following morning, the dealership in the heart of the city began its day just like any other. Staff hurried through the routine of the showroom, going through the motions of high-end sales and polished smiles. But the atmosphere was about to shift, and no one knew it yet. Around 8:00 a.m., 2 Rolls-Royce Boat Tails, among the most expensive and exclusive cars in the world, glided to a stop outside the dealership. The morning sun hit their glossy surfaces, illuminating the cars in an ethereal glow. One was obsidian black with silver trimmings, and the other a rich royal blue with rose gold accents, shimmering in the sunlight like a work of art. Together, the 2 cars were worth over $50 million. And the manner in which they arrived made it seem like money was the least important part. The Rolls-Royces didn't drive, they glided. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A young couple who had been touring the showroom paused, their eyes widening in disbelief. An espresso cup slipped from a customer's hand as he rushed to the window to get a closer look. Even the cleaning staffs, who were usually too busy to pay attention to the outside world, stopped in their tracks, staring at the vehicles in awe. The cars arrived with such quiet power, with such presence, that no one in the showroom could look away. As the staff crowded around the windows, whispering and pointing, one question ran through their minds. Who were these people? The doors of the royal blue boat tail opened, and the same 2 teenage boys stepped out. Alex and Ben. They wore the same combat shorts and plain white t-shirts they had the day before, just as they had walked into the dealership looking for answers. But now, there was no hesitation, no self-consciousness. They were calm, composed, and confident. No longer the nervous, humiliated kids who had been mocked and dismissed. As they moved to the front of the black boat tail, the second rear door opened, and their father stepped out. His tailored dark gray suit spoke volumes about who he was. The cut of it, the crisp lines, the perfect fit, all told the world he was someone who paid attention to the smallest details. His posture was flawless, and his pace was unhurried, as though he had all the time in the world. The moment he stepped onto the pavement, everything changed. The atmosphere of the dealership shifted, as if the room itself had been reorganized by his mere presence. The arrogant salesman from the day before, who had been laughing with a coworker, froze in place. His eyes widened as he saw the boys walk toward him, then looked behind them at their father. Recognition hit him like a cold wave, and panic set in. He straightened his posture, wiped his sweaty palms on his pants, and tried to recover his composure. But it was too late. He had underestimated the very people he had mocked. This wasn't just a visit, it was a reckoning. The glass doors of the dealership opened, and the trio walked inside, their every movement purposeful. The silence that filled the showroom was deafening. It was as though the whole room could feel the shift in power, the change in the atmosphere. The father approached the receptionist, his tone calm and firm. "I'd like to speak to the staff member who assisted my sons yesterday," he said. The receptionist blinked in surprise but nodded. "Yes, sir. One moment, please." The salesman, who had been so eager to tell stories about the two boys the day before, stepped forward with a forced smile. "Sir, that was actually me," he said, his voice now upbeat but strained, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. The father cut him off with one look. "No," he said coldly, "you weren't the one who helped them." The salesman faltered, but before he could speak, the father turned to the dealership manager, who had been watching the scene unfold. "I believe your security cameras recorded yesterday's interactions," he asked. The manager nodded, his expression now serious. "Yes, sir. We archive everything." "Then I'd suggest you review the footage before this conversation continues," the father said firmly. A thick silence descended over the room as the manager disappeared into his office. The staff, who had been whispering among themselves, now realized exactly who these boys were and who their father was. This wasn't just a wealthy man. This was a man who knew exactly how to command respect. The manager returned 5 minutes later, his face pale. He avoided eye contact with the salesman as he spoke, his voice tight with apprehension. "We reviewed the footage, sir. The staff member who helped your sons yesterday was Emily Torres." The father turned slowly toward the salesman, his eyes sharp with quiet fury. "And this man?" he asked, gesturing toward the salesman, who was visibly sweating now. "The one who mocked my sons." The manager cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. He misrepresented the interaction. His behavior was inappropriate and unprofessional. The father's gaze hardened. "Effective immediately. You're terminated," he said. Gasps rippled through the showroom as the salesman's face drained of color. There were no words of protest. He simply lowered his head, gathered his things, and walked out, past the very boys he had belittled just the day before.